Now, let's dive into today's sort of theory here. So, it's sort of like a fairy tale, parallel, I guess, which is The Princess and the Frog, the abridged George R.R. Martin fairy tale of Quentyn Martell, right? Okay, so The Frog Prince parallels to a summary of the variant modern fairy tale. He says, note there are, this is from Reddit, posted by Anali,
Anali, yeah.
Cirrus of the Lunar Light. Says, note there are a few evolutions out there, and curiously, the original renditions don't actually involve a kiss, but the transformation from frog to prince happens after the princess throws the frog against a wall. Other versions also have a more complicated request from the frog. So I tried to pick which one I thought best matched the story's intention. I think there was a Disney movie a couple years ago, right? Princess and the Frog or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't know. I didn't watch it, but
Might assault in the background of
something.
right.
Okay. So he says, there's a tale they tell of a princess turned to a frog by a witch, a spell which could only be broken by a princess granting the frog a single wish. And of the most beautiful princess in the kingdom, who had lost her golden ball deep in a pond under a linden tree. So upset was she that she wept near the pool until a curious frog spoke to her. If I could fetch your ball, what might you offer in return? The princess offered him gold and jewels, anything. But the frog cared not riches. All he wanted for was a single kiss. The princess accepted, and so the frog dove deep beneath and brought back her prize. But that evening, when the frog arrived at the castle step, slippery and slimy, the princess was repulsed, and refusing him, closed the door and ran to her father, the king, telling him of what had happened. And as the frog tried to call to her, pleading her to let him in, the king bid her to keep her promises. Reluctantly, she opened the door. She closed her eyes tight and leaned in to kiss the creature. But when she opened them, she found he was a frog no longer. When what was once a frog had been transformed into a handsome prince, and the two soon fell in love and lived happily ever after. So I think that's sort of an abridged version of it too.
Right.
So the prince who became a frog. Quentyn Martell was never a handsome boy, short-legged and stocky, thickly built with hair and brown of newly turned earth. His forehead was too high, his jaw too square, his nose too broad, and even as a prince, he was little known in his kingdom of Dorne, unlike his much beloved sister, having fostered at Yonrud instead of Sunspear. Yet he was happy for his part. Anders Yonrud had been more than a father to him, and his son, Cletus Yonrud, his dearest friend, and he had dreamt of love before, though girls made Quentyn anxious, especially the pretty ones. First, Yins, the eldest of Anders' daughter, until she had been wed. Afterward, the Drinkwater twins, and most recently, the youngest of Lord Yonrud's daughters, Gwyneth, who had been taken a liking to him. But when his father Doran called him in that day to the water gardens, he was told the most beautiful woman in the world was waiting in Meereen, and that she was secretly promised to his own hand by a pact long ago. That by sailing across the world to her, he would not just win her heart, but be a hero to his country as well. The one which secretly breathed his name before. Vengeance, justice, fire, and blood for that sin which was done long ago. I never asked for this, he thought, yet how could he disappoint his father, and how could he not dare to dream even a little bit that a boy like him would be able to change the course of the world and win love, that he could aspire to something greater. So he promised and set out with a small group of knights and friends, including Cletus, his brother, and all but blood, to charter a ship and begin their grand adventure. This will be a tale to tell our grandchildren, Cletus had declared the day they set out from his father's castle. And in Planky Town, the Dornishmen had toasted Quentyn's future bride, made ribald japes about his wedding nights to come, and talked about the things they'd see, the deeds they'd do, the glory they would win. Tell me, my Westerosi friend, what is there in Meereen that you should want to go there? The most beautiful woman in the world, thought Quentyn, my bride to be, and if the gods are good. Sometimes at night he lay awake imagining her face and form and wondering why such a woman would ever want to marry him. Of all the princes in the world, I am Dorne, he told himself. She will want Dorne. It was soon on their journey that tragedy struck. Corsairs near the disputed lands, and 3 of his companions would fall in that far away land, including Cletus, the one who he'd remembered and always had a laughing smile. Give your bride a kiss from me, Cletus had whispered to him just before he died. It was not supposed to end like that for them. But what could he do? Crawl back to Sunspear defeated with his tail between his legs? His father's disappointment would be more than he could bear, and the scorn of his cousins would be withering. Doran Martell had put the fate of Dorne into his hands. He could not fail him, not whilst his life remained. So Quentyn resolved to go on. It was too late to turn back, and when the party would arrive in Volantis, they would find themselves bargaining with the Windblown, a company of sellswords who they would swear service to. In the secret hope, it would help bring them closer to his goal, Princess Daenerys. In Dorne, Quentyn Martell had been a prince, in Volantis a merchant's man, but on the shores of Slaver's Bay, he was only a frog. So named the Windblown, whose custom was to choose their own names, and he hoped so fast that when the big man shouted a command. So next part here, into the dark waters. Arriving into Astapor, Quentyn, now a frog, right, began to realize that this wasn't the adventure he'd first hoped. Adventure stank. He would be glad to put the city behind him. The Red City was the closest thing to hell he'd ever hoped to know. The sights that he had seen riding down those red brick streets would haunt him forever. Disease and death followed his every step, surrounded by clouds of glistening green flies and dying men staggering through the streets, bloody and befouled. Children fighting over half-cooked puppies, and kings begin set upon their by starving dogs, and fires everywhere. He could close his eyes and see them still. Yet he must press on, scrubbing body armor stains and facing danger at every step if need be. In that darkest moment, a golden glimmer of opportunity. The tattered prince would order the group to secretly join to Daenerys' side in Meereen, and then await further instructions, claiming it had to have been their goal all along. Quentyn Martell almost laughed out loud. The gods are mad, but would Daenerys really take them in, one of his companions? Hugh would wonder aloud, and if she does, what would they be to them? Spies, assassins, envoys? He could only try. So the frog who bore a golden gift. So Frog, right, and his companions find their way to Meereen, picked up by Princess Daenerys. Princess Daenerys' men, where she would ponder what to do with the strange Dornish band. The frog has a gift for you, her paramour Dario would tell her. The frog, she says, giggling. And who is he? Some Dornish boy. He squires for the big knight they call Green Guts. I told him he could give me his gift to me and I'd deliver it, but he wouldn't have it. Oh, a clever frog. Give the gift to me. She threw the other pillow at him. Would I have ever seen it? The next day, the party was the party was announced to the princess and her court, but when peering down from her throne, Daenerys didn't see a great prince. She didn't see anything much at all. The youngest of 3 and the least impressive, a solemn, stocky lad, brown of hair and eye. His face was squarish with a high forehead, heavy jaw, and broad nose. The stubble on his cheeks and chin made him look like a boy trying to grow his first beard. Why would anyone want to call him Frog, she thought. Perhaps he can jump farther than the others. And again, later at the feast, she would think it might be because he was not handsome, just an ugly little boy. As Frog stared forward, Dario Nahara stepped in front of him and held out a gloved hand. Give this gift to me. Stone-faced, the stocky lad bent, unlaced his boot, and drew a yellow parchment from his hidden flap within. This is your gift, a scrap of writing. Dario snatched the parchment out of the Dornishman's hand and unrolled it, squinting at the seals and signatures. Very pretty, all the gold and ribbons, but I do not read your Westerosi scratchings. Bring it to the queen, Sir Barristan commanded. Now. Frog had crossed the seas, lost his friends along the way, traveled through hell, but at least he was at the end of his journey. But for his final deed, he might have thought to himself. Dany could feel the anger in the hall. I am only a young girl, and young girls must have their gifts, she said lightly. Dario, please, you must not tease me. Give it here. The parchment was written in the common tongue. The queen unrolled it slowly, studying the seals and signatures. When she saw the name Sir Willem Derry, her heart beat a little faster. She read it once again, and then she read it once over, and then again. Dany laughed. For just a kiss. The Dornish prince flushed red, whilst her own court and counselors gave her puzzled looks. Radiance. Why do you laugh? They call him Frog, she said, and we have just learned why. In the Seven Kingdoms, there are children's tales of frogs who turn into enchanted princes when kissed by their true love. Smiling at the Dornish knight, she switched back to the common tongue. Tell me, Prince Quentyn, are you enchanted? No, your grace. I feared as much. Neither enchanted nor enchanting, alas. A pity he's the prince, and not the one with the wide shoulders and the sandy hair. You have come here for a kiss, however, you mean to marry me. Is that the way of it? The gift you bring me is your own sweet self. Instead of Viserys and your sister, you and I must seal this pact if I want Dorne. My father hoped you might find me acceptable. Dario Naharis gave a scornful laugh. I say you're a pup. The queen needs a man beside her, not a mewling boy. You are no fit husband for a woman such as her. When you lick your lips, do you still taste your mother's milk?
Jeez,
Jeez.
Dario, come on.
Prince Quentyn answered him. Dorne is 50,000 spears and swords pledged to your queen's service. 50,000, mocked Dario. I count 3. Enough, Daenerys said. Prince Quentyn has crossed half the world to offer me this gift. I will not treat him with discourtesy. She turned to the Dornishman. Would that you had come a year ago. I am pledged to wed the noble Hisdar. Sir Jairus said, it's not too late. I will be the judge of that, Daenerys said. Resnack, see that the prince and his companions are given quarters suitable to their high birth and that their wants are attended to. As you wish, your radiance. The queen rose. Then we are done for now. And so the door was closed against him for the first time.
Wow.
A princess's promise. Later in Dany's chambers, gazing over the city and the sea, pondering her marriage and future with the grandfatherish knight, Barristan, the conversation would turn by chance, perhaps, to reconsider that very promise. Your grace, if I might be so bold, there is another road. The Dornish road, Dany sighed. The boy seems pleasant and well-spoken, but House Martell is ancient and noble, and has been a leal friend to House Targaryen for more years than a century, your grace. I had the honor of serving with Prince Quentyn's great uncle and your father's 7. Prince Lewin was as valiant a brother in arms as any man could wish for. Quentyn Martell is of the same blood, if it please your grace. It would please me if he turned up with these 50,000 swords he speaks of. Instead, he brings 2 knights and a parchment. Will a parchment shield my people from the Yunkai? If he had come with a fleet, Dorne is too far away to please this prince. I would need to abandon all my people. You should send him home. Dornishmen are notoriously stubborn, your grace. Prince Quentyn's forebears fought your own for the better part of 200 years. He will not go without you. Then he will die here, Daenerys thought, unless there is more to him than I can see. 1 second. I just got a little bit of a cold, as I just need to grab.
Oh, hey, no, I can take over right there if you want, my friend. And let me just say, while you're taking that sip of water, this is just hinting. I'm pulling up a different couple things here. The old frog might not be dead. And so I want to mention, as I was reading this thing about the tattered prince and so on, like there may be more to this guy than we think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this is actually, it's interesting. And I didn't realize how direct the connection was between the princess and the frog. He's literally called the frog.
Yeah, I know. And he's going to meet a princess. It's just one of these things where sometimes you just sort of overlook these things that George is like throwing right in her face.
Yeah, it's a direct, it's pretty blatant.
So okay, back into it here. So a fairy tale broken. And so here our tale breaks. But what happens when the promise is broken? The gate remains shut and the frog does not receive his kiss. Do they give up and return to the pond a frog, or risk something more to become a prince they hoped they could be? My marriage need not be the end of all your hopes. I know why you are here. for you, said Quentyn, in awkwardly gallantry. No, said Dany, for fire and blood. Fire and blood was that truly Quentin's main goal or his father's? Hoping to scare him away, Dany took Quentyn by the hand and led him to the pit where the two of her dragons were confined. Remain outside, Dany told Sir Barristan, as the Unsullied were opening the huge iron doors. Prince Quentyn will protect me. She drew the Dornish prince inside with her to stand above the pit. The dragons craned their necks around, gazing at them with burning eyes. The Dornish prince had gone as white as milk. Broken chains clanked and clattered around his legs. Quentyn Martell jumped back a foot. A crueler woman might have laughed at him, but Dany squeezed his hand and said, "They frighten me as well. There is no shame in that. My children have grown wild and angry in the dark. They are fearsome creatures. They are dragons, Quentyn." Dany stood on her toes and kissed him lightly, once on each cheek. And so am I. She drew him away from the pit. He does not belong here. He should have never come. You ought to return. My court is no safe place for you, I fear. You have more enemies than you know. You made Dario look a fool, and he is not a man to forget such a slight. I am a prince of Dorne, your grace. I will not run from slaves and sellswords. Daenerys Targaryen, whatever else she might be, was still a young girl, and she herself would claim when it pleased her to play the innocent. Like all good queens, she put her people first, else she would never have wed Hizdar Lorak. But the girl in her still yearned for poetry, passion, and laughter. She wants fire, and Dorne sent her mud. You could make a poultice out of mud to cool a fever. You could plant seeds in mud and grow a crop to feed your children. Mud would nourish you, where fire would only consume you. But fools and children and young girls would choose fire every time, thought Barristan Selmy. If it is not my place to counsel you, Prince Quentyn, but if I were you, I would not return to my chambers. You and your friends should go down the steps and leave. Prince Quentyn stared. Leave the pyramid, leave the city, return to Dorne. The frog who dared to return a prince. But this frog was not so easily parted from their destiny. Barristan Selmy frowned. Why are you still here? Prince Quentyn flushed. The marriage pact was made by two dead men and contained not a word about the queen or you. It promised your sister's hand to the queen's brother, another dead man. It has no force until you turned up here. Her grace was ignorant of its existence. Your father keeps his secrets as well, Prince Quentyn, too well, I fear. What name do you think they will give me should I return to Dorne without Daenerys? Prince Quentyn asked. Quentyn the cautious, Quentyn the craven, Quentyn the quail. The prince who came too late, the old knight thought, but if a knight of the King's Guard learns nothing else, he learns to guard his tongue. Quentyn the wise, he suggested, and hoped that it was true. Quentyn might have considered Barristan's advice, but after the events of the Draznek's pit, Daenerys had disappeared from Meereen. And why else would she have shown him the dragons and tell him what she did if not to test his character? Who else but him could now find and rescue her? And what would it mean to everyone who had relied on him and sacrificed along the way his journey if he were to turn away? I will not keep you here, Quentyn later told his friends. My father laid this task on me, not you. Go home if that is what you want, but whatever means you like, I am staying. Daenerys is the means to the prize, not the prize itself. The dragon has 3 heads, she said to me. My marriage need not be the end of all your hopes. This is what I have to do for Dorne, for my father, for Cletus and Will, and Maester Kedry. They're dead, said Jairus. They won't care. All dead, Quentyn agreed. For what? To bring me here so I might wed the Dragon Queen? A grand adventure, Cletus called it. Demon roads and stormy seas. At the end of it, the most beautiful woman in the world. A tale to tell our grandchildren. But Cletus will never father a child unless he left a bastard in the belly of that tavern wench she liked. Will never have his wedding. Their deaths should have some meaning. So Quentyn would approach once more from the for help. Once more for help the leader of the Windblown he thought had betrayed his trust once by leaving the company. Sit and stay, what you came to say. I promise not to have you killed until I have heard you out. That is the least I can do for a fellow prince. Quentyn, is it? Quentyn of House Martell. Frog suits you better. As Quentyn recounted his story, the company would mock him for what had happened, but he had to ask anyways. The tattered prince sipped at his wine. So, no wedding for Prince Frog. Is that why you've come hopping back to me? Have my 3 brave Dornish lads decided to honor their contracts? I need you to help me steal a dragon. Bad idea. But here we
Bad.
go. The frog who dove too deep.
Yeah.
Quentyn did not want to die, he thought to himself. I want to go back to Yonrud and marry Gwyneth, watch her flower into beauty, have a child by her. I want to ride in tourneys, hawk and hunt, visit my mother in Norvos, read some of those books my father sent me. I want Cletus and Will and Maester Kedry to be alive again. Quentyn had never felt so much a boy as when he'd stood before Daenerys Targaryen pleading for her hand. He thought of betting her. The thought of betting her terrified him almost as much as the dragons had. What if he could not please her? She could not truly love her new husband, though. This is my duty, my destiny, he would tell Jairus, who tried to dissuade him. This will be my grand adventure. Men die on grand adventures. He was not wrong, though that was in the stories too. The hero sets out with his friends and companions, faces dangers, comes home triumphant. Only some of his companions don't return as well. The hero never dies, though. I must be the hero. All I need is courage. Would you have it, Dorne, remember me as a failure? She lives, she must, she is lost, but I can find her. And when I do, she will look at me the way she looks at her sellsword. Once I have proven myself worthy of her. Years from now, when I am dead, this will be the song they sing of me. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Quentyn would muster his courage and approach the dragon's lair. Only now, as his goal drew ever closer, more threads of doubt crept into his heart. What am I doing here? Father, why? It was black beyond the doors, a sullen, Stygian darkness that seemed alive and threatening, hungry. Quentyn could sense that there was something in the darkness, coiled and waiting. Warrior, give me courage, he prayed. He did not want to do this, but he saw no other way. Why else would Daenerys have shown me the dragons? She wants me to prove myself to her. Jairus handed him a torch. He stepped through the doors, and there, scales in the darkness, he had found his dragons. His voice caught in his throat, and what came out was a broken croak. Frog, he thought. I am turning into frog again. The food, he croaked. Remember, bring the food. The serpent resolved itself into a neck and tail, and then the dragon's long-horned head appeared, his eyes glowing in the dark like golden coals. His wings rattled, stretching. Quentyn let his whip uncoil. He could do this. He would do this. His father had sent him to the far ends of the earth for this. He would not fail him. He snapped the whip in the air and with a crack that echoed off the blackened walls. The pale head rose. The great gold eyes narrowed. Wisps of smoke spiraled upward from the dragon's nostril. Down, the prince commanded. You must not let him smell your fear. Down, down, down. He brought the whip around and laid a lash across the dragon's face. It hissed its return. And then a hot wind buffeted him, and he heard the sound of leathering wings in the air, full of ash and cinders, and a monstrous roar went echoing off the scorched and blackened bricks as he could hear his friends shouting wildly. Garrus was calling his name over and over. A big man was bellowing, behind you, behind you, behind you. When he raised his whip, he saw that the lash was burning. His hands as well, all of him was burning. Oh, he thought. He began to scream.
Oh,
Almost done here. Yeah.
okay.
Happily never after. The Dornish prince took his last shuddering breath in the bleak black dawn 3 days later. A cold rain hissed from a dark sky to turn the brick streets of the old city into rivers. Daenerys' young herald and scribe, Missandei, had sat at his bedside night and day, tending to such needs as he could express, giving him water and milk of the poppy when he was strong enough to drink, listening for a few tortured words he gasped out from time to time, reading to him when he felt quiet, sleeping in her chair beside him. As Sir Barristan entered, the tiny scribe looked up to approach. Honored sir, the prince is beyond pain now. His Dornish gods have taken him home. See, he smiles. It would have been kinder if the dragon had devoured him. Then at least it would have been quick. This fire is a hideous way to die. Small wonder half the hells are made of flame. After the girl was gone, the old knight peeled back the coverlet for one last look at Quentyn Martell's face, or what remained of it. He should have stayed in Dorne. He should have stayed a frog. Not all men are meant to dance with dragons. But was Barristan correct? Was Quentyn really destined to fail? Was he really just a frog in Dorne that died becoming a prince at the end, unable to deal with the forces and expectations tied to that path? Or would he have had the tail backwards, denied from his promise? Did a prince leave the world a frog, still hoping for the chance to show what he could truly offer? Perhaps there is something to be said that sometimes maybe the only line between success and failure is just a little love. This was written on Valentine's Day.
Wow.
So too long, didn't read. The tale of Quentyn Martell parallels the story of the Frog Prince, a prince who is turned into a frog who travels into dark waters to offer the princess a lost golden prize for a kiss. The princess refuses to uphold her promise at first, but eventually reconsiders, and the frog is turned back into a prince again upon being fulfilled. However, in A Song of Ice and Fire, the dark twist is that the frog stays rejected and is left a frog, and so must decide whether to return to the pond to dare to try another path. In the end, our frog, Quentyn, dreams for something more in life, takes a dangerous path, and pays the price. But perhaps I'd like to think our frog could have been a true prince if only they had gotten that kiss. Maybe a little love is all it takes to change one's fate. Which could be honestly, I don't know, love in A Song of Ice and Fire, and like how it's tied to everyone's fate is literally like the whole deal. It literally is like the theme behind the whole deal, because Rhaegar, Lyanna, that we think the love that they sort of show for each other, boom, is what causes like this whole deal to kick off. Robert's not having any love for Cersei, then you look at love of like parents like Tyrion and Tywin, and
right.
It's like the whole deal, man.
Yeah, it's a song of love and lust.
Right.
That is really what it is. All these different bastards out here, all these different who's sleeping with who, the pathway. Yeah, this was really interesting, and I think it's like, I know there's some real tinfoil stuff where people try to consider him laying in bed there. Is he alive? Did they
I think
tattered
he's dead.
prince? Think he's dead? Did somebody else walk in? There was a point of view says he was right there and he felt the flames. Okay, so he's dead. All right, but yeah, it is really interesting. Sir Willem Derry pops up again, and it's just right there. This guy, House Derry, connected again to Dany, and then you start to look at the way which Dorne is. I mean, she kind of laughs at this. This. I think this might come back to bite her in the dragon tail.
Yeah.
Because guess who those swords are going to be pledged to now? Young Griff, which again is now going to make this. I mean, now it goes back to
young Griff could marry the sister, right? That's the whole deal.
Yeah, exactly. And so he set up two different sort of ideas here. If Dany has the dragons, and if she's good and locked, like in a marriage alliance with Quentyn, okay, we're good. Also, if that doesn't work, or even if it does work, I'm going to try to secure young Griff here and the Golden Company, and everybody works together and Dorne's good. But what I think it happens now is it's going to be split and fractured. I don't know if rumor hasn't necessarily got back to, because Ariane is just sitting there thinking like, I don't know what happened to my brother. Have no idea. We have this plan, but like word may come about that that he's dead, or that he, it could be understood that he went down there. He was scorned or whatever, and then went down and tried to get the dragons, and then is killed.
Yeah, because in the show, remember, Dany just gets Dorne. She just goes over, and Dorne just allies with her, and then that's it.
Right.
And
yeah,
so it's gonna be. I think it is gonna be totally different. But it's just interesting. It's another interesting sort of potential love story, or idea of a love story. in A Song of Ice and Fire, man. I mean, we talked about the power of King's Blood and blood magic and all that. You know
Yeah.
what? Cue up Huey Lewis in the news, man. It's the power of love.
Power of love. It is the power of love, or the lack thereof it here in this. Yeah, no. Yeah, man, you're right. It is interesting. I think too. I was reading just a little bit more about Quentyn, what people think George was trying to do with Quentyn, and it's really just about like he's unfortunately it's just this device that George maybe is using to kind of like show us more about Oberyn and his relationship and like like more of the Dornish kind of culture and the different houses and why was he not in Sunspear and how the Viper had been kind of I don't know had killed one of the Ironwoods and then all of that kind of stuff. So and then it's just see more about the dragons to go over here and learn more about Dany and Sir Barristan is reflecting on things with Elia Martell, Lewin Martell, and then also the days during Aegon's conquest, where in which Dorne did not bend the knee. Right? They eventually you had to the only way you got Dorne to work with the Targaryens was to marry into them, a marriage alliance, the power of love. They actually never did bend the knee. That's I don't know if people that's something I think people forget is that they were so stubborn that they were the only nation not to bend the knee
I know.
except through marriage.
So do you think So do you think it's going to come back to bite Dany? She's
I
also kind of rude to him. I mean, that's just unnecessary.
I thought so too. Yeah, and I think I don't know if it I yeah, because I still feel like
Dario's a bad influence. I'll go ahead and say
yeah,
that.
he's bad influence for sure. And Sir Barristan has a good point, right? She's still young. George always wants to write very realistically. Dorne sent her mud. I mean, unfortunately, this wasn't a dashing. It's the same thing that Ariane has issues with, that she's susceptible, and she reflects on this in the Winds of Winter preview chapters that it's, good looks, right? A good looking knight kind of, she falls for these guys or whatever and ends up getting in trouble. So she's got to, gotta get,
And
gotta work on that.
And poor Quentyn, Martell.
Yeah, I know. It sucks, but he did everything. He did everything he could.
Should he have stayed home?
He should have went back. He should have went back. But he had to try, and I don't know. That yeah, that was stupid, right?
Yeah.
It's just dumb. And then
but the funny thing is that the show does it.
Yeah.
And Tyrion just goes down there and opens it and he's good to go.
Right.
Obviously, he's not gonna kill Tyrion.
Right. Yeah.
So clearly, like the drag, I mean, I don't know. It's just it's weird that the show chose to include that.
Yeah, just somebody has to let him out and sort of, free them, if you will, or whatever. And he's, I mean, he's just, and again, just someone to go down there to view the dragons and learn more about them. Because as you read the chapters I was reading up here, just on the Reddit theories and things, and looking back over A Search of Ice and Fire, like, yeah, there's bits of Dany and others talking about the magic of dragons and the power of dragons. And I feel like that's all it was. And then unfortunately, he's just getting laughed at and made fun of here. And it's just
Do you think yeah, so I think ultimately his arc is doing I think you're right. I think it's showing sort of ultimately I think it's supposed to, I think it's going to, the whole deal is going to set up that Dany didn't work for Dorne.
yeah.
And it might come back to haunt her.
And that's been an issue for the Targaryens. And so you have like a Blackfire or a real Targaryen or just some poser in young Griff who probably is going to work with Arianne and is this false or real dragon, who knows, that is gonna make a power play on King's Landing, and Dorne's there. So it's it's even hinted at in that Reddit post that she could go on to win King's Landing and everything, but not have Dorne, and that could be that other thorn in her side, or who knows, or maybe where we see the Bells episode in the show. Maybe it's like Sunspear again. It's kind of like Rhaenys Targaryen did back in the day. Just you're going in there and just scorching them with fire, but they just go into hiding and it doesn't really do much, So it's something. There is something there though, that's going to hurt her, I think, later on. and all of these different love interests around her, because would she have just had his daughter not have been there and this was an option, it might have been another path for her to just move on because she was being kind of hustled out of Meereen and she chose to kind of stay and say, no, I can't abandon this city. I gotta help where I can. What kind of queen would I be if I just did that? And so that's why she turns to his daughter when the Green Grace suggests that. So now it's like, had he had been there, maybe she could have chosen a different path and gone to Dorne and just said, screw it. And she even references he didn't bring a fleet, which the Greyjoys are bringing a fleet, right? That's the whole thing. They're trying to show her, hey, you have our ships and let's make a marriage pact. But yeah, I think it's gonna bite her in the dragon tail later on. Really do.
Yeah,
So.
interesting. Well, cool. Little interesting theory. I guess it was written for Valentine's Day. You know what? Hey, still love's still in the air. Okay.
Matt, I would love for folks to, because we did that Tatters, not even just like is Quentyn, he gets in with the wind blown, but if you guys get a chance to go look up, because there's a lot of different candidates for that, who the Tattered Prince could be, Captain of the Windblown. If anything, it's just cool to go look at that kind of stuff, or even just speculate, thoughts on Quentyn or the effects of him being turned down, right? I mean, so
Right.
send us your thoughts on all those things.
A little bit of love might have saved his life. Okay.
Right, it might have.
Hey, don't take money. It don't take fame, as you
No.
don't need a credit card to ride this train. Okay.
No, yeah.
It's strong, it's sudden, it's cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life.
Wow.
That's the power of love.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
Do you think George was just like watching Back to the Future or listening to
Oh, yeah.
or listening to little Huey Lewis when he was writing this? Like, oh,
It's
I'm gonna tie in Huey Lewis in the news to this Princess and the Frog tale.
And that's the other thing too. I mean, again, that's why I was trying to look for like the real reason as to why he does this. Because what is George doing? Just having a blast,
I don't know, man. We've got like H.P. Lovecraft and Sesame Street references in this thing. So
right. It's all over, and it's threads. It's still growing. It is a well-watered plant that's out of control. It is actually out of control, and it's so much so that he can't even contain it in one book.
He doesn't know what to do. Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Hey, well, thanks for checking this out, guys. So next week we are just gonna go ahead and start it. Storm of Swords, the best book in the series.
Yeah.
And then we will take a break from it when we hit House of the Dragon. Once we get a little bit closer to that, once we know, and then we'll do some more House of the Dragon, Fire and Blood content to get sort of ready for that once that sort of comes up, and we'll dive back into that. But right now it's still up in the air. I really thought we'd get a Super Bowl trailer. We didn't.
Right.
So, and now they said they just finished filming. So don't know. So with that, we're just going to dive into A Storm of Swords, which is the best book in the series. I'll fight anyone on it.
Yeah.
I know some people say it's a Dance of Dragons, but we ran a poll on our YouTube and A Storm of Swords won.
Oh, so I think A Storm of Swords. Yeah, I think Dance gets a little. Yeah, it's really good.
Dance is really good too.
And Dance may be even better once we get wins. I mean, I think sometimes you start
wins better be the best book in the series when it
right.
If it finally comes out.
Jesus, my God.
Awesome. So, all right, guys, with that, next week we will begin reading A Storm of Swords. The that's a prologue, right?
Yeah, prologue.
Yeah, as a prologue. Yep. Yes, it does. It's a Chet chapter, right?
Oh,
I think
God, it's terrible. I mean, it's not terrible, but I just read it the other day. I'm like, there are some cool connections.
I know. First chapter is Jaime 1, and it's like, let's go. That's where things like get really good.
Yeah.
So we will be into that. The Storm of Swords prologue, and we got some more Patreon content coming too. Be sure to check that out. The Elder Brother, right? As we got
like a 3-parter.
This could be big. Yeah. So we got a big thing on that. Be sure to check out Ez and I's personal social medias. Wow. Super Gains Bros at @Wombrett_2M. Guys, we're posting all over the place. I post on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, the whole deal. We are actually just starting like today, as of this recording, our Bend the Knee TikTok. So you can definitely check that out, because I know a lot of people spend a lot of time on there. And the cool thing is we can take some of that content, probably not all of it, just depends on, because we like the YouTube sort of formatted a very specific way. But some of that will appear on YouTube as well. So that's kind of cool to give you guys a little more bite-sized pieces of content too, which is awesome, on Instagram and stuff like that as well. So keep an eye out for that. You can check out any of our other projects as well. Heroes of the Horn, which is Wheel of Time. the Elder Wand, which is a Harry Potter podcast. Just did some more of that Hyperspace Hangout where we're talking Star Wars. Or if you want to hear Ez and I talk more about like things like Russia and movies and all this stuff, I don't know, check out the Matt and Ser show. It's over on iTunes and Apple as well. You can find premium content on Patreon and on Apple Premium, where you get access to all of the extra content from all of our shows. We'll probably start planning out our next hangout probably sometime in March.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Get our next big Zoom hangout going. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you guys. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember that winter is coming.